$80 billion. That's more than the GDP of most countries, more than the net worth of some of the world's richest people. And right now, it's being buried beneath the earth in what engineers are calling the most ambitious infrastructure project of the 21st century. A tunnel so long, so deep and so technically complex that even the people building it aren't entirely sure it will work. This isn't just construction. This is a calculated gamble with billions of dollars, entire economies, and possibly human lives.
I'm standing at the northern entrance of what will become the longest underwater tunnel ever built. Behind me, you can hear the constant hum of machinery.
The ground beneath my feet is vibrating. This isn't just a construction site. This feels like the edge of something much bigger.
Hanging in the balance. The tunnel stretches 76 miles beneath one of the most unstable seabeds on the planet. It's designed to connect two regions, separated by water, politics, and centuries of geographic isolation. When complete, it will carry high-speed trains, moving at over 200 miles per hour, us transporting 40 million passengers and 50 million tons of cargo every single year. The engineering specs alone sound impossible. Dual tubes, 15 escape tunnels, ventilation systems powerful enough to replace the air inside every 12 minutes. And all of it built under water pressure that could crush a submarine.
I'm now descending into the main construction shaft. We're going down almost 300 feet. The temperature is dropping. You can feel the weight of the rock above you.
The engineers here told me that at the deepest point of this tunnel, there will be nearly 400 feet of solid earth between the tunnel ceiling and the ocean floor above it.
But here's what makes this different from every other mega project in history. This tunnel isn't being built through stable granite or predictable bedrock. It's being carved through a geological nightmare. Layers of fractured limestone, pockets of methane gas, underground rivers that shift without warning, and a fault line that seismologists have been monitoring for decades. The same fault line that triggered a magnitude 7 earthquake less than 50 years ago.
They've just shown me the tunnel boring machine they're using down here. It's the size of a 15-story building lying on its side. The cutting head alone weighs over 2,000 tons. And right now, it's chewing through rock at a rate of about 60 feet per day. But that's when things go smoothly.
And things have not been going smoothly. And 3 months into construction, the first boring machine hit a section of water-saturated fault rock and stopped. Engineers tried to stabilize the tunnel face with chemical grout injections. It didn't hold. Water began pouring into the excavation zone at a rate of 12,000 gallons per minute. They had to halt operations for 47 days while they pumped concrete into the surrounding geology just to create a stable working environment. That single delay cost the project $800 million.
I'm standing inside a section of tunnel that's already been lined with concrete. The walls are 3 feet thick, reinforced with steel rebar every 6 inches. And even with all of that, you can still hear water moving behind the concrete. It sounds like a river, because it is.
This is where the engineering starts to reveal its fragility. The tunnel is designed to withstand external water pressure of up to 10 bar. That's roughly 145 pounds per square inch, pushing against every surface of the tunnel constantly for the next 100 years. To manage that, engineers installed a drainage system behind the concrete lining, a network of pipes and channels designed to collect groundwater and pump it back to the surface. But here's the problem. That system relies on pumps, hundreds of them, and pumps fail.
I'm now in one of the equipment chambers where the water management system is controlled. There are monitors everywhere showing pressure readings from different sections of the tunnel. One of the engineers just pointed out a section where the pressure spiked 20% higher than the models predicted.
It's unprecedented.
They're calling it an anomaly. But when I asked what happens if that pressure keeps rising, he didn't have an answer.
Because nobody really knows. The computer models used to design this tunnel are based on data collected from core samples drilled decades ago. But geology isn't static. Water tables shift, rock formations settle, seismic activity changes everything. And this tunnel is being built through a region that experiences low-level seismic events almost monthly. Every tremor, no matter how small, creates microfractures in the surrounding rock. Those fractures let in water. More water means more pressure. More pressure means more stress on the tunnel lining. And if that lining fails in the wrong place at the wrong time, the result would be catastrophic.
I'm walking through one of the planned emergency evacuation corridors. It connects the two main tunnel tubes every 800 meters. The idea is that if something goes wrong in one tube, passengers can escape into the other. But this corridor is narrow, maybe 6 feet wide, and it's over a quarter mile to the next exit point. I'm trying to imagine thousands of people moving through here in an emergency. It doesn't feel like enough space.
And that's not even the worst-case scenario. The real nightmare is fire. In a tunnel this long and this deep, fire doesn't behave the way it does above ground. The Gotthard Tunnel fire in 2001 burned for 3 days and reached temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Celsius. 17 people died. That tunnel was 11 miles long. This one is 76. The ventilation system here is designed to push smoke toward designated exhaust shafts during a fire. But if the ventilation system fails, or if the fire grows faster than anticipated, smoke and heat will fill both tubes in minutes. And there's nowhere to go.
I just asked the site manager about fire suppression systems.
He showed me the water mains installed along the tunnel ceiling. But then he mentioned that at the deepest sections, water pressure in those mains might not be strong enough to reach a fire on the tunnel floor. They're still working on a solution for that.
Still working on it. That phrase keeps coming up. Because this project is so unprecedented, so technically extreme, that engineers are solving problems in real time. They're building the tunnel faster than they're answering some of the fundamental safety questions. And the reason is pressure. Not water pressure. Political and economic pressure. This tunnel was sold to the public as a transformative infrastructure project that would generate billions in economic growth, create hundreds of thousands of jobs, and unify regions that have been isolated for generations. Delays are politically unacceptable. Cost overruns are politically dangerous. So the project moves forward, even when the engineering isn't fully resolved.
I'm back on the surface now, standing near the ventilation shaft that will serve the central section of the tunnel. It's a vertical concrete tower that drops over 400 feet underground. The airflow system will pull millions of cubic feet of air through this shaft every hour. But I'm looking at the construction schedule posted on the site office wall, and this shaft isn't scheduled to be completed until month 63 of the project.
Which means they're excavating and lining tunnels before the life support systems are in place. It's backwards, and it's risky, but it's the only way to meet the timeline. The financial model for this project assumes the tunnel will be operational within 9 years. Every year of delay costs approximately $4 billion in lost revenue and increased interest on construction loans. So corners get cut, not in obvious ways, but in timing, in sequencing, in the margin of error they're willing to accept.
I've just been handed a geotechnical report from last month. It shows that in section 17, the boring machine encountered... They had to redesign the tunnel lining on the spot. Thicker concrete, more steel, which means more weight, which means more stress on the surrounding geology.
And this is where the crisis starts to take shape. Every adaptation, every design change, every unplanned reinforcement adds weight and complexity to a system that was already operating at the edge of what's physically possible. The tunnel was designed with a specific load tolerance. The concrete lining, the rail system, the ventilation infrastructure, all of it calculated to balance weight, pressure, and structural integrity. But now, section by section, that balance is shifting. Heavier linings mean more settlement. More settlement means stress fractures. Stress fractures mean water infiltration. And water infiltration means the drainage pumps have to work harder, longer, and under greater pressure than they were designed for.
I'm in the control center now. It's about 10 miles from the construction site.
There are dozens of screens monitoring everything from air quality to seismic activity. One of the technicians just told me they detected a microquake 2 days ago, magnitude 2.1, barely noticeable on the surface. But down in the tunnel, they recorded a pressure spike in the groundwater system. It took 6 hours for the pressure to return to baseline.
6 hours. That's how long it took for the geology to stabilize after a minor seismic event. Now imagine a magnitude 5 quake, or a 6. Seismologists estimate there's a 14% chance of a significant earthquake occurring in this region within the next 30 years. The tunnel is designed to last 100 years, which means over its operational lifetime, there's a very real probability it will face a seismic event it wasn't fully designed to handle. And the consequences of that aren't just structural. If the tunnel is carrying a high-speed train with 800 passengers on board when an earthquake hits, there's no time to stop, no time to evacuate. The train is moving at 200 miles per hour in a confined concrete tube 400 feet underground.
Thanks. I asked the engineers what the emergency protocol is for a seismic event while trains are in the tunnel. They told me the trains have automated braking. But the deceleration distance for a train moving at full speed is over 2 miles. In a 76-mile tunnel, that means a train could be dozens of miles from the nearest exit when it finally stops.
And that's assuming the tunnel itself remains intact. The lining is designed to flex during an earthquake, absorbing seismic energy without fracturing. But that design is based on models, simulations, lab tests on small-scale samples. No one has ever tested a 76-mile concrete tube under 400 feet of rock during a real earthquake. We won't know if it works until it's tested under actual conditions. And by then, it will be too late to redesign it.
I'm looking at the construction timeline again. At the current pace, the first passenger trains are scheduled to run through this tunnel in less than 7 years. But there are still 18 miles of tunnel that haven't even been started. The second boring machine hasn't arrived on site yet. It's being manufactured in Germany and won't ship for another 11 months. They're already behind schedule.
Which brings us to the final and most disturbing part of this story. The $80 billion budget isn't a fixed number, it's an estimate. And it's based on assumptions that are already proving to be wrong. The original budget assumed consistent geology, predictable excavation rates, and minimal delays. None of that has been true. The project is currently running 16% over budget, and they've completed less than 9% of the tunnel. If that cost overrun rate continues, the final price tag could exceed $110 billion. And if delays push the completion date beyond the 10-year mark, financing costs alone could add another $20 billion.
I just spoke with a former project engineer who worked on the early design phase. He didn't want to be named.
But he told me that during the planning stages, there were internal warnings about the geological risks.
Some engineers recommended a different route, one that would add 15 miles to the tunnel but avoid the most unstable fault zones.
That proposal was rejected because it would have increased costs and extended the timeline. So they chose the shorter, cheaper, more dangerous route.
They chose speed and cost over safety and certainty. And now, billions of dollars into construction, with contracts signed and political reputations on the line, there's no turning back. The tunnel will be finished. The trains will run. And somewhere deep beneath the ocean, in a tunnel lined with concrete and hope, we'll wait to see if the engineers got it right. Because if they didn't, if the water pressure exceeds design limits, if a fire spreads faster than the ventilation can control, if an earthquake hits at the wrong moment, this $80 billion engineering marvel could become the most expensive disaster in infrastructure history.